I always say EHCP plans, but it's like the plans is within it.
Everybody does, yeah. Or even my clients, God bless them, they all say, everyone says EHCP plans, but it's actually education, health and care plans. But
so what I'm really interested to hear, I mean, it's really, again, like I say, quite humbling to have you talk to us, because you've been doing this for a very long time, and I, came back to education law, but I find EHCPs an interesting topic. For the benefit of the listeners, can you tell us what an EHCP is?
Yeah, so the way I sort of describe it to my clients is basically it's an education, health and care plan, which effectively is it is a legal document which is drawn up by the local authority following assessments done on children who require additional support, have diagnoses, neurodivergent, whatever it may be, mental health, social issues. And basically that document is key because it sets out, or should set out, the child's personal details, the description of the child's needs, the provision to meet those child's needs, any health and social care needs, medical needs, and then the name of the school that the child should go to. So it's a really, really, really important document insofar as if there is a particular section F which sets out the provision. If that provision is not implemented, the child could get legal aid and take the local authority to court and judicial review on the basis that it's not meeting its statutory duties in accordance with the Children's and Families Act. So it's a really important document, which is why parents fight, or indeed we fight on their behalf, to ensure that literally the wording of those documents is commensurate to the child's needs.
What do you think is the problem? So just taking this in a few little stages. So there's the 20-week deadline, isn't there? Or 20-week period, if you call it.
Yes, yeah.
Which is not being met.
No.
So tell us about that, because this is one of the biggest issues that I find.
I mean, so from the point at which you ask for an education, health and care needs assessment, that's the start of the process. The local authority has 6 weeks to decide whether they're going to say yes or no. If they say yes, and they issue a plan, then that entire period should take 20 weeks. Unfortunately, that's not always being met. It's set out in the regulations. Now, again, there can end up being quite a lot of parallel litigation going on. And normally when a parent comes to me, I do threaten judicial review if it's appropriate to do so in the circumstances and get them basically moving the local authority. And generally they will obviously then abide by I say abide by the law. They haven't done up until that point, but they do move things forward when you threaten them. But yeah, I do get a lot of complaints. I mean, there have been delays of 4 or 5 months. There's been case law whereby the local authority delay in amending plans following the annual review. So it's, to be honest with you, Haresh, the system is broken. I hate to say it, and I say it more often than I'd like to. The delays are horrific. The tribunal is overwhelmed. And I always say to parents, you've just got to continue your fight. As exhausting as it is for them, which of course we can all imagine, there are horrible situations in which children are either in the wrong placement or waiting for a placement or being home educated pending, the resolution of a placement. And it's a really, really, really difficult situation. And so again, I always say to them, it's important to get some advice because a lot of the time parents don't offer. I always ask them, do you know the importance of the EHCP? Because sometimes we get them for our children, but we don't. And I say that because I want them to know what their legal rights are. So that they understand it more holistically.
What about the first, the initial stage you were saying, if they get one?
Yes.
What happens if they don't get one?
So you can appeal. So it's literally at every stage you can appeal. So if they have an education, health and care needs assessment, they could even refuse to give them that. You can appeal. They have a needs assessment and then don't issue a plan. You can appeal. They have the plan, but you're not happy with the plan. You can appeal. So thankfully there is a right of appeal, but it just feels like it's an uphill struggle.
But then, Anita, what about the cost of all of this? How are parents expected to fund this? There's no legal aid.
No, I mean, I think there's very low form of legal help for obviously parents who are on income support or universal credit, and children who are, I think, over because obviously young people, I think it's over 18 possibly. I mean, I've not done legal aid, unfortunately, in such a long time, but they may get legal aid. But otherwise, yes. Unfortunately, it's either some pro bono charities, advocates that parents say to me they've been to, they do it themselves. Or, yeah, they have to, unfortunately, spend, costs, which again is another tribunal in which you don't get your costs back.
Yeah, I mean, you work on a very good fee model to help parents, which is very commendable, really. And, I've got my reduced fee clinic, which I, get a lot of inquiries to kind of deal with this. However, I think because it's an area of law which, again, is very niche, one of the things I find is that, parents kind of don't know where it's going to end.
Yeah.
That's the problem, isn't it? Because the councils can take so long.
Yeah, I mean, that is true. But I think once you're in the tribunal process, you know that there is an end in sight,
Yes.
even though that hearing
Yes.
sadly may be 12 months into the future. But at least you know. And that's why I always say to parents, as much as you may not want to go down that road, it is a path that actually is much better to be on, because the local authority is then, they're forced to comply with the deadlines, and then you have a hearing date. You've got something to work towards. Whereas when you're sort of trying to, swim with the sharks, if you like, where there's deadlines and you're not really sure what's going on and you're constantly chasing the local authority, I think it's actually harder. So whilst even the tribunal system, in terms of the delays, is not ideal, I do feel that it's the best forum to be in to actually get a result. And again, thankfully, my success rate in getting children into independent special schools, if that's what they need, and coming out with really good, detailed EHCPs, I'm very, happy to say is very high.
I'm really interested to hear about your magic in achieving your success rate. Tell me.
I mean, I think, again, I'm probably just one of these lawyers that really believes in every stage that I do to try and, again, sort of give it your all. So the first stage is obviously, the appeal, which you need to lodge and get the appeal registered. Very little happens thereafter, although the odd occasion I have actually put something in with an expert report, and the next thing the local authority will do is cave in. It's normally if they've not issued an EHCP. But, honestly, there's no I in team. And with these EHCP appeals, I always say to parents, again, costs permitting, that they need a lawyer, they've got themselves, but they also need their independent experts and a barrister if we get to a hearing. And I honestly tell you that if they can manage it, is the, winning sort of ingredient, recipe, if you like. But it really is about that. And once you've got that strong evidence, then I try and negotiate with the local authority and I put pressure on them. And look, I think earlier on, if you'd asked me 10 years ago, my appeals rarely got to a hearing. But now they are getting to a hearing more, but we're still successful, thankfully. And I think because it's just purely funding, I think local authorities are being forced to take things all the way, because there might be maybe they think that there might be a small window that they might actually win, in which case they don't have to put the child into a specialist provision. I don't know, but I do feel like we're being forced to the nth degree now, to the door of the court, rather than my experience of it literally years ago was I was getting them thrown out. Well, not thrown out, but agreed much sooner than they are now.
What do you think parents would want to be reassured with, knowing that, there is help out there, but then at the same time they might be dismayed about the whole process? Like, what would you like to say to parents?
I think I want to just try and reassure parents that there is help and support out there, and that it can always be managed in sort of baby steps, if you like, in stages, so that it's all manageable, not just cost, but also the emotional turmoil that it takes, not just on the child, of course, who is the one at the forefront of all of these cases, but also on the parents. It's a very stressful journey for the family. And I want them to, I always say to them, they've got to get their boxing gloves on and they've got to be ready for the fight, and hopefully find whoever that might be for them, but to find somebody who can take that stress away from them and to battle the local authority, because it is a battle. It's an uphill struggle, but to assure them and reassure them that the end is always an investment in their child, which thankfully I'm very grateful to be able to say that it's more positive than it's not.
Do you find it the other way around where...
I think from my experience, most of my parents' EHCPs are really quite dire, if I'm honest with you. They're vague. They could relate to little Johnny down the road and not their child.
Right.
It's rare that I'll have one where it's in a state in which the parent is happy and then, or in a state in which I'm going to say to them, I don't think you need to do anything with that. I don't actually think I've ever come across it personally.
Yeah. I suppose my experience has been that I've seen one in particular, which kind of was, yeah, I mean, it wasn't brilliant, but it kind of was okay. But I think it was only until I got asked, oh, well, I want to have this as well, I want to have this. And the expectations started to go a bit beyond.
Yeah.
And I kind of thought, not sure if you can get
But I think that's where I find it helps to have your team, so like an expert.
Yes.
Because the EP, I always say, I've done this area for so long, but I'm not an EP.
How can the use of experts help the EHCP?
So the use of, for example, an educational psychologist is really, in my view, integral to any appeal. They can help with the overall assessment of the child's needs. They visit the local authority proposed school. They'll also visit the parental choice of school, and they will draw a report on the reasons why the parent school is better than the local authority chosen school. And they will also comment on the EHCP, and that report will then be used to draft the working document, which, as we know, is the EHCP but annotated, which hopefully reduces the issues in dispute by the time you get to the tribunal. So if you look at it from that perspective and it's dealt with in that way, then even if you end up at a hearing, you're not going with 99 problems, you're going with, say, 50, because you've managed to resolve some of them by virtue of your expert evidence. And my experience is, from all the decisions that obviously I've read and been a part of in these tribunal hearings, is that the judges themselves will heavily rely on the expert reports.
Right.
And
yes.
it's up for obviously it's up to the judge to determine which experts' evidence they take over the other, but they very much heavily. I just got a decision actually the other day in which pretty much 98% of the working document was given in our favour. I think there was just one, and it was only because one aspect, which I recall the client wanted, but there wasn't any expert evidence for it. And I do remember saying to the client, can we back what you want up, by something? And it was something the parent wanted, but we put it in. And interestingly, even in the judgment, the judge said that they were very happy with the working document having annotated and footnoted exactly where the provision came from, i.e. it was coming from an occupational therapy report or an educational psychologist report, and then things that couldn't be backed up, that wasn't necessarily always included. So it just shows the level of kind of specificity that's required in these cases. And as I say, it really is a team effort.